Good afternoon, and welcome to today's Blogging 101 workshop. My name is Joey Donovan Gaido, the owner of Cup SEO, and I will be your host for the next 90 minutes talking all about blogging. So before we get started, just a couple of things to give you the lay of the land so you can communicate with me if you'd like to ask a question or you're having any kind of a connection issue or anything like that. What you guys are going to see in the upper left-hand corner of your screen is a little talk bubble, okay? It should be in a little gray area. So go ahead and click on that. And then when you click on that, you'll see on the right-hand side of your screen should be a vertical tab or vertical window. And at the bottom of that, you'll see a blinking cursor. That's where you guys will be able to type any questions at any time. I always like to keep my chat open and it's enabled this way. If you got a question someone, if it's in 10 minutes, 20 minutes in, it's not a big deal. Type it up. I may not address it right away because I'm during different breaks, we'll go ahead and address those kind of things. But feel free to ask as many questions as you like. It's always more fun and more educational for everybody involved if you guys ask what's on your mind. So anyway, that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So my first question for you guys is, what is the purpose of a blog? And quite often it's thought of a blog as a way to sell, okay? Or at least that's what a lot of people perceive a blog as, kind of a selling tool, right? Should have high ROI, return on investment, things like that. And that's just plain not true. The purpose of a blog, if you strip away everything else, the core element of it is to help build relationships. Okay, plain and simple. Relationships with your customers, your potential customers, and if you're a blogger and you're just blogging because you have a cause or something that you have passion about, like I also do dad blogging. I have a blog called Daddy Brain, which I don't give enough attention to these days, but it's turned into a thing where I do workshops with dads, and it's some really high level content on that blog that's made explicitly to help dads with their struggles as a parent. So blogging helps build relationships. It helps connect you with your viewers, okay, your potential clients and your clients. So, but there are other benefits to a blog beyond that. Specifically, when you become a blogger and you start blogging consistently, you start to gain credibility in the marketplace. You start to be perceived as a thought leader, okay, as opposed to someone who's sharing somebody else's content. Now you're the one sharing your thoughts about a particular topic, okay? And let's take a look at that. I'll show you guys an example of what a Cup SEO blog looks like. We'll dissect it a little bit, and then we're going to dissect it even more and look at the editing side of the blog and really just go through every single nook and cranny to give you guys a really good, solid overview of blogging, okay? So this is a blog I wrote fairly recently. It's a series that I'm working on about online marketing and the user experience. That's this particular blog post. But I've been doing a whole series on holistic online marketing and really soup to nuts. What is it that you need to do in order to be successful online? If this sounds like something interesting to you, you guys will see right here, I've got a webinars tab. The rest of my webinars are complimentary. Here's the online marketing webinar. Feel free to sign up for as many as you like. Okay. So this blog post has a few components I'd like to share with you. But first, I'd like to just express how to write a blog post. Let's kind of look at that as well. So oftentimes when I talk with business owners or marketing professionals about blogging, there's a lot of apprehension. There's kind of a feeling like, well, what am I going to blog about? I don't have anything to say. Who's going to want to read what I have to say? This is very common. So if you're feeling this while you're sitting on the other end of this webinar, you are in the 95% of people who had the same reaction. So it's a pretty simple answer, though. What you're going to be writing about, blogging about, is what you're an expert at. And this may be hard to comprehend immediately, because what happens is in each of our own professions, we're experts. We really, really know what we're doing, how to do it, why we do it, the philosophy behind it, right? Hopefully we know these things if we've got a business. And to us, it's commonplace. So a good example is me telling you guys about blogging. To me, I do this on a daily basis. I do this for myself. I do this for my customers. So to me, there's nothing out of the ordinary about it, right? Because I just do it all the time. So for you guys, it's going to be similar, but in your niche and in your industry, it's the same deal. To give you an example from my dad blog, I talk a lot about dad's emotional life. And we talk a lot about how dads are more than a one-hit wonder, where they either get angry or they want to watch football or drink beer. You know, men are more complex than that. At least some men are. So whatever it is that you work on, you really just want to talk about that in the blog. And the best way to kind of get a list of what's relevant to talk about is think about the questions you get the most from your clients. Okay. What do they ask you about the most? What are their pain points? What are they struggling with? What are the big areas that you usually help them? All right. So for me, it's search engine optimization, conversion, user experience, web design. These are some of the really big things that people come to me and ask for help with. And each of those can have a list of 10, 20, 30 or more blog posts where you're talking about something very specific within that main bucket or that main topic. Okay. So sorry about that. I kind of digressed a little bit, but I thought it was important to mention that. Now, with that being said, let's take a look at Understanding Online Marketing Part 2, User Experience, and how to write a good blog post. The first thing you're going to want to do is write an engaging headline. Okay. What I like to call awesome blog titles. And this one here is actually a little bit more straightforward than my usual ones. But I have what I call the 3 C's that I like to include in every single headline, or in this case, blog title that I write. The first C is to make sure it's clear. Okay. We don't want to get too cute or be ambiguous or too metaphorical here, unless that's the kind of blog it is. Okay. So let's say, for instance, I was a novelist and I wrote mystery novels. People probably would be pretty jazzed to see some intriguing kind of, hard to unravel titles. But unless you do that kind of work, don't do that. Keep it clear as possible. That's the first C. The second C is to make it as compelling as possible. So in this case, understanding online marketing. And for Cuppa SEO, I hear quite often from customers that they struggle with their online marketing, whether it's their website, their blog, their social media, their SEO, which stands for search engine optimization. So this is something that addresses a very specific pain point that most of my customers have. Okay, so number 2 is keep it compelling. Number 3 is keep it concise. All right, so as far as best practices for titles, you're really not going to get dinged or penalized by Google if it's a little bit on the longer side. but think of it like any kind of sentence that you might write. Make it as concise as possible while it remains clear and compelling. So there is one more C to look at here, guys, and that is the fourth C is to be creative, okay? If possible. And the reason why I say if possible is, one, if you have a hard time writing things that are a little bit on the creative side, I'd rather you not stress over that. I'd rather you just focus on being clear, compelling, and concise, okay? Also, sometimes it does make your headline read a little bit long or a little bit more complex than it needs to be. So in this case, Understanding Online Marketing Part 2, User Experience, it's not overly creative. And that was intentional because it made things confusing. And if you guys, again, have any questions so far, feel free to ask in the chat. If anybody has joined in a little bit late, you guys should see in the upper left-hand corner a little dialog bubble in gray. Go ahead and click on that, and your chat box will open up on the right. And if you have questions, feel free to ask. So, okay, so we talked about titles. Now let's talk about content creation. Going back to that first question I asked, what is the purpose of a blog? Another purpose of a blog is to offer rich, relevant content that solves problems, that answers questions, that addresses pain points, okay? Think about it. If you're looking for someone who does search engine optimization, and you get to my blog and you see 5, 10, or 15 articles written in a language that you can understand, because let's face it, if you're coming to me, you probably don't really have a deep comprehension of SEO. That's going to be really valuable to you. And you're most likely going to stick around and read that whole article, and you might even look around for some more articles on my blog. So keeping it rich, relevant, benefit-driven. All right. Things you want to avoid in the content here is kind of self-grandizing. And by that, I mean if you've won awards, or if you guys just have 200 plus years of experience on your team of 5 people. All important, don't get me wrong, but most readers of blogs don't care. They care about the pain they're in. They care about solving the problem that they have. Okay? So keep that in mind. Let's just see quickly if we've got any questions. No questions yet. Okay, great. So let's just continue. So we talked about overall what to do with the content here. All right, but let's dissect this page a little bit more. Okay, we've got a little bit of introductory copy here. We've got an image, and images are super important for 2 reasons. One is it helps break up the copy. It's an aesthetic break from dense content, okay, which is especially important if you're writing blog posts that are 1,000 words or maybe longer. So again, it breaks up the content. A second benefit of using an image is that it can engage the reader without them having to read anything, okay? In this case, they do have to read what my image says. But it's an easy way to engage with people in a more visual medium. All right. A third benefit of putting imagery in your blog is that it's going to add value to your search engine optimization, or your SEO value to that particular blog post. So what happens is, and I'll show you guys this when we look at the editing side of this blog, is that we're going to name our images. Okay, we're going to give them a specific name and also what's called an alternate image name, which I will show you as well. But what that does is, instead of this image being logo.png or 12865.png or .jpeg, it has a name. and that name qualifies that image. It tells Google, hey, this blog post is about this topic. And Google likes that. That helps Google identify a good result to deliver to somebody who's searching, in this case, for something about online marketing or user experience. Does that make sense, guys? So structurally here, we've got what's called an H3. This is a subheader. You can use multiple H3s on a page. We've got quite a bit more copy here, followed by more imagery. And again, all these images are optimized. They're all named. What we're talking about here is the navigation on the Dollar Shave Club website and how it's very clear and an excellent user experience. Down here in this image, we're looking at a more complicated navigation. So if you are a Williams-Sonoma or a J.Crew or something like that, what a good solution would be for you. So you see what's happening here. We've got some really good, relevant content about user experience and navigation. Okay. Here's a third example, Banana Republic. And then as we come down, we've got some more information. I like to do what's called a deep dive in a lot of my blog posts. I don't want it to be topical about like 300 to 500 words and kind of just skate over the surface. I want to dive in. I want to give my readers an in-depth analysis of what to look for on their website. And when I do that, I'm giving them really great, relevant content, but I'm also showing them that I'm an expert at this type of work. So I accomplished more than one objective with the one blog post. Okay. Then here we dive into mobile home pages, sub pages, and so on. This actually has a lot of imagery. So it's going to really work well for us when we are looking to optimize this blog post. So the biggest thing to keep in mind with content creation is to keep it relevant. I'm often asked, well, Joey, how long should my blog post be? Is there a specific length that I should strive for? So, and the answer to that question really is, it depends, okay? And the reason why it depends is because there are many factors that go into it. One factor is going to be, well, what's your writing style? Do you like to write about one very specific topic that in 300 or 400 words, you've given some really good information? Or is your writing style a little bit more elaborate, a little bit ornate, or maybe what I like to call romantic? Okay. So that might wind up being longer, 600, 700, 800 words. What you also need to think about as far as content length is going to be, well, who's your reader? Who's your audience? And what is the branding of your company? What is the personality of your company? You know, and does it call for a deeper dive, or does it call for lighter material? So some of my clients, to give you an example, they have like a children's store, for an example, right? Where they sell children's dancewear and accessories. So a blog for that website is probably going to be 400 or 500 words per blog. Why? Because mostly moms are reading it. And if any of you guys out there are moms, you know, and you're business owners and you're working full time, everybody's super busy. So what they want to know from that blog is, what do I need to know? Get me in, get me out. I don't want to read a 2,000 word blog post. Okay. So much more optimal when you're dealing with busy people, moms, dads, to be short. Okay. On that same note, though, if I'm selling children's dancewear, I also have to keep in mind that it's mostly going to be moms or grandmas coming to my blog, right? So I want to write to the female perspective, okay? And what I'm selling is also kind of cute, right? I'm selling dancewear for kids. So we definitely don't want an overly professional, stiff writing style there. We're going to want something that's more fluid. One of our webinar viewers today, they have an establishment where they take care of children. They do childcare at a very high level. So things there might be addressing typical client questions that parent concerns, parent worries. Okay. Another thing to write about might be, well, what do we do in a day? It might be a 10-part series. The first thing we do in a day is this, and here's why. And here's how we train our people to do this, so that you know your kids are in good hands and they're getting an education while we're doing it. And they're learning social skills and early reading and so on. So you guys get the idea. So let's take a look at the other side of what a blog looks like. And we have a smaller crowd today. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is just open up the channels, because we're essentially on the Google Hangout platform. So I'm going to open up the channels just for a moment and see if you guys have any questions that you would prefer just to share verbally instead of typing. Okay. So hey guys, can you guys hear me okay? Sorry about that. It looks like we might be having some technical issues here. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so it looks like we're having, I'm so sorry guys, looks like we're having some technical issues. I'm hardwired, so my Ethernet connection is good, but it looks like we might have an issue with chatting. Looks like I've got a couple people here. So if you'd like to ask a question, please go ahead. If not, there's no pressure, okay? And let's move on to the editor side of the CUPPA SEO blog so you guys can see what it looks like. So what I'm going to do that is at the end of this article, which looks a lot longer than it is because of all the pictures, we have a little edit button, okay? And you guys can see from up here, from this little sub-navigation tab, that I'm logged in, okay? Once you're logged in, this little edit button appears. And when we click on it, it's going to take us to what is commonly referred to as the editor side or the back end of your blog. So what do we have here? There's a lot of stuff to look at. So let's go ahead and start at the top. Okay. Right up here, you guys will see it says Understanding Online Marketing Part 2 User Experience. That's our title, right? This is what essentially becomes what we call in the business an H1 or a header 1. It's your biggest headline on the page. Okay. And again, we want to optimize it with some SEO to help Google find our blog post. So in this case, we've got online marketing, which is a keyword phrase that I use a lot, user experience, and also UX. The acronym has some SEO value as well. When we scooch down the page a little bit more, we'll see here, this is what's called a permalink, which in essence is your URL for that particular blog post. Okay, so usually what WordPress will do, we're in WordPress right now, and what most blogging editors will do is just kind of drop in here the name of the blog post. It's always a good idea to take a look at that and see what it says, because sometimes it says weird things. Sometimes it winds up with numbers. If you've saved your blog post before putting a title in here, it saves it with some like just random number. So always good to look in here. To change it, it's very easy. All you have to do is go in here, type in whatever you want. So you just type it, and then you would click OK, and it would change that URL. I'm going to cancel that because I like my URL name. So next up is going to be your toolbar, which is right over here. And some of these things are going to kind of look like what you guys, if you use Microsoft Word or Apple's Pages, you're going to see some very familiar things here. You've got your bold, your ital, strike through, bulleted list, number list, and so on. Here's your text justifying, left, center, or right. What you're going to do with these buttons is actually format your text, okay? So for instance, if I wanted to make this whole paragraph bold, some bloggers like to make the first paragraph of their blog in bold just to draw a little bit more attention to it. Just like in Microsoft Word, you guys would highlight it, click bold, and now it's bold. And if we preview the change, you guys can see now right here, it's instant, the content is bold. Okay. So let's undo that because we don't want it bold. I'm not going to go through every single one of these tabs because that would probably bore you guys to death and be unnecessary. But I wanted you to see what it is, okay? And if you already have a WordPress blog or WordPress website with blog integrated, you may or may not have used this. But one super important button here is this toggle button. You see what happens there? When I click on it, it expands and gives me more options. You can also view your blog post visually in this space. So what that means is that this is going to look similar to how it looks live. All right. So you see, you've got your formatting, your bold is bold. You can see all your images. And this just goes on. And at the bottom, you'll see all your text links look just like they're going to look on a live blog post. If I click on text, for those of you out there that are good at coding or prefer to code your formatting in, what you would do here is click on text, and now you've got what at first looks like gobbledygook, but I assure you it's not. This is some HTML code, very basic stuff. And this is what tells your blog how it should look. Go back to visual. And there it is again. One more really good thing to look at and understand is this area here with the little arrow that's pointing down. This, of course, expands and gives you some options. Again, just like in Microsoft Word, just like you would change the size of a font or maybe the format of a font in Word, this is your spot where you're going to tell WordPress exactly what it is you want to do with the content you have highlighted. So to give you an example, what is UX? Let's highlight that. And now you guys can see this is changed to heading 3, which is my H3. I've got quite a few H3s here. Navigation is an H3. There it is. It changed again. If I go to the copy and highlight under it, you see now this says paragraph. So it's good to check and see what content is already if you've got it formatted. But also, let's say, for instance, this was paragraph style, and you'll see the difference. Now it goes back to looking just like a regular sentence, right? And I go ahead and come back up here again, click H3, and now it's formatted. And this looks a little bit different when it's live. It makes it a little bit bigger. I'll show you guys. See the difference? It definitely gives it a bigger presence on the page than your normal text. And it will give you a bigger presence than it would if you were just bolding that content. So any questions, guys? Please let me know. So interesting because when we do this webinar live as a workshop, we just have 20, 30 questions. I just think it's so much easier to talk about it than to type about it. But please, if you have questions, let me know. And if you guys wind up with questions after the webinar is over, feel free to shoot me an email. You guys will get a follow-up email from me which is also going to include a link to the free Blogging 101 ebook that comes complimentary with your webinar today. And that's going to be a handbook that gives you a lot of the same information that we're talking about today, so you don't have to remember everything, okay? So back to our editor side, we kind of looked at all this already. So now I would like to take you guys over here to the right-hand navigation. We've got some very good buttons here, very helpful. The top one is preview changes. So as you're typing up your blog post, if you want to see what it looks like, you click on preview changes, just like we've been doing, and you will get a view of what it looks like without having to publish it. Very important, because we don't want to publish it until we're done with everything and we feel good about it. Okay, so under that, we've got some other items. This is the status, which is published. Before you publish a blog post, it'll say draft. If you need to pass the blog post on to somebody, you might put pending review in here and then pass it on to your marketing director or the owner of the business if they want to review it first before approving it and pushing it live. Below that, visibility is public. There are some other interesting features here, though, especially if you've got like a subscription-based blog, something that somebody may pay for, or maybe it's only open to customers. This is a place where you can go ahead and click on password protected, make whatever password you want, and share it with whoever you want. In here, you can also make the page private, which means nobody else sees it, which kind of what's the point? But but sometimes you might want to make things private to hide them, especially like if you're doing a webinar and you have a freebie, a giveaway, and then when you're not doing the webinar, you want to hide that and make it private so nobody can access it. You might want to use that. Revisions just shows you all the revisions that have been saved. Okay, this gets kind of funky, but you know, if you delete something by accident, you can look at all the old revisions and try and find the correct one and restore it. Right over here is a restore button. So we've also got here publicize. That's something that if I want to set this up to publish directly to social media like Twitter and Facebook, I can set that up. I don't typically do it that way from my blog because sometimes the formatting gets weird when WordPress so kindly pushes it through for me. So I do that separately when I want to share my content. And I don't always want to share my content the moment I publish it either. If I finish a blog post at 10 o'clock at night, it's not really a good time to be publishing it anywhere, at least not for my audience. Okay? If I write something and I say, boy, I really hate this, I can go ahead and move it to the trash. And then as I work on things, you guys see here, there's a little button that says update. So since I made some changes, WordPress wants to prompt me and let me know, hey, do you want to save these changes? So we'll click update because we put everything back to how it was. And what you'll see is once this updates, nothing really changes. Now, what you might notice is on some themes, depending on your WordPress theme, this might change that if you haven't made a change, it won't say update. It'll kind of be grayed out. I don't really see that too much anymore these days. It's just kind of just always live if you want to click the update button. So next up, we scroll a little bit further down to categories. Okay, and before I go through what's going on here, what I want to do is have a little discussion and answer the question, what are categories? And also, what are tags? Because these are two extremely key elements to a blog, but they're often misunderstood and they're often kind of wires get crossed on them, what their actual purpose is. Okay, so categories. Categories are for humans, okay? They're for the human eye. So in other words, and I will show you this on Cup SEO, we've got categories that are kind of big buckets that deal with broader topics that I might write multiple blog posts about, okay? So again, that makes it easier for a visitor, a viewer, to say, oh, wow, cool. That was a really cool article about user experience. Let me see if he's written any more. They'll look at the categories in the sidebar and they'll say, oh, let me click on UX. So let me show you what this looks like. Okay, so if we go ahead and leave the editor side, we'll click on view post here. Here's a couple more things here. Get short link, view post. Get short link. Typically, I don't use that, but that's going to give you the equivalent of like a tiny URL. A view post. If we click on that, you'll see it takes us to what we call the front end or the live end of your blog. So right here are my categories. All right. So if I go ahead and read this article about user experience and I want to read more, I've got a user experience category here to click on. Okay. And I say, oh, wait a minute, I want to learn more about delicious coffee. There's only one blog post in there at this point, but you guys can probably tell from the name of my company, I love coffee. So, but you see here, just to give you an example, Bleats. Bleats are a very short blog post series that I write. A bleat essentially is the combination of a blog post and a tweet. And the marriage of those two becomes a bleat. All right, so it's essentially 420 characters. Okay. And the thinking behind a bleat was that, hey, well, I don't always have time to write a full blog post, but I can write something like this that will take me less time. Again, 300 characters total, including the headline. But you see here, we've got a Blogging 101 tips. I clicked on this to look at the whole post. But again, when I clicked on Bleats over here, it gives me a list with like a little Cliff Notes version of each bleat that I've written. And this is what your viewer would see as long as there was more than one post within a category. So again, categories are for the human eye. Now let's take a look at what tags are. Go back to our edit side. And then I'll show you guys actually how I populate this. Tags are for the search engines. And just like categories are for the human eye, tags are what help connect the search engines to your blog post. Essentially what you're listing here is a short list of keywords that you're using for your blog. All right. A good rule of thumb for both categories and tags is to use a maximum of 5 per blog post. Okay, so what you see here is for this particular blog post, which is Understanding Online Marketing, Part 2, User Experience, I've got a how-to category, marketing, user experience, and I also used web design because user experience is such an integrated part of web design that I went ahead and kept that in there too. But when you're on your edit side, you'll see every single category that you have, whether you use them or not. If you've created one, it'll be in here. Okay. Then once you check them off and click update, the checked off ones will rise to the top. So they're easy to review. Make sure you got what you want there. Okay. Tags are a little bit different. There's not an ongoing list of them. You just go ahead and enter them into this box here. So let's say, we'll just click this off for a second. Let's say I forgot to type the whole phrase user experience. I would come in here, type it in. You guys can see I've used it before, so I'll get a pop-up. I can go ahead and click on that. It does not have to be capitalized. It doesn't matter if it's caps or lowercase. But what does matter, let's click add here. What does matter about tags is that whatever you're using in your tag section here needs to be a word or a phrase that is actually used at least a few times in your blog post. Okay. So for instance, if this was a blog post, about blogging, and I didn't make mention of UX or user experience or online marketing, then it would kind of be just like wasting everybody's time, because what happens is Google looks and says, okay, here's a tag. Joey's telling me that call to action, online marketing, UX, and user experience are all keyword phrases that he's using. And then Google proceeds to check the document, to check and see, are these phrases in his title? Are they in his content? Are his images named with these phrases? And if they are, Google is much more likely to show my results on page 1. Me as a result, I should say. My blog post as a result on page 1 of natural search results, okay? And if you're not familiar with what that means, is essentially just like anybody else, when you go into Google and search for something like local ice cream parlor, Google gives you the most relevant results possible. And part of how that happens is because they're looking at literally millions of web pages in just a few moments and discerning which ones have the best results for you. So if I search for local ice cream parlor and I'm in Madison, Wisconsin, it's probably not going to give me results in Phoenix or in California, right? It's going to give me local results because Google knows, okay, if I'm looking for local, it's got to give me local. Let's just go ahead and check and see if anyone's got some questions. Doesn't look like it. Hope you guys are doing okay, that you have a good connection. So you can also choose from your most used tags. I don't usually do that because before I even write my blog post, I've got my phrases chosen. Down here is layout. This is more just how my website is set up. There's also a featured image button here. And what that is if I want to set my feature image and it always goes in the same spot and it's always the same size, I could click on this and choose any of the images I've ever loaded, or I could upload a new file. Okay. And guys, I don't want you to worry about memorizing or worrying about remembering all of this. I know it's a lot of information. I'm trying to, kind of take it slow and go a little deeper with each section. But it's really just to get you comfortable in your blog. Okay, so this is not a kind of an obstacle for you in writing your blog. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out for now. But what I am going to show you is what an image looks like, how we name it. Okay, so I'm going to come up here to online marketing and the user experience. When I click on it, you guys, I'm not sure if you can see, let's make it easier. In the O there, you can see the little cursor stick. And if I click on this, it gives me a little pop-up navigation. This will allow me to justify things left, centered, or right. I could also justify it left and not have any copy sit next to it. Or I can click on the pencil, and that pencil will let me edit. And now, demystified is how do you make your images optimized. Okay, so you see here, down here is the image name. Let me take you guys through it, because what happens is this whole front part, HTTP, cupseo.com, WP content, uploads, yada, 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 that's all something that WordPress does. But you guys can see part of what I highlighted here, the actual image name that I gave this image is Understanding Online Marketing UX User Experience. Okay. And without getting too technical, the way I named that is I had this image at one point on my desktop, okay? And it was probably a numbered image because I made this on my iPhone, saved it, and then just opened it on my desktop. So it was probably something like 12386.jpg, whatever. What you do is you actually click on that name on your desktop and rename it with an optimized name. So once you do that, once you have that optimized name, you also want to drop it here. So what happens is, to kind of take you guys through the process, I'm going to leave this and I'm going to show you exactly how to load this in and kind of how to do this, all right? So I'm going to just close this for now. And let's say I want to add an image, right? So let's just say I want to put it up at the top. I bring my cursor to the top, click on Add Media. Then it's going to give me an option to select files, or if I have something on my desktop, I can just drag it into this region and it'll load it automatically. So I'm going to select a file. Let's pick something from the desktop. And we're going to go into temporary Cup SEO. Let's say I wanted to load this image. And this is what I was talking about, guys. See, guys, right down here, this is actually already named. Desktop Web Design Conversion Strategies. And to name this, when this is on my desktop, I kind of just do a slow double click on the name and it highlights everything, and then I can change it. And I'm sorry if this is confusing because I'm going a little bit deeper than usual here. But once it's named, now I can click on it, click open, and it imports it into my WordPress. Okay. And here it is, right? You guys will see over here is the URL. And below it is your title. Titles don't really matter. It's okay to leave that there, but titles don't have any SEO value. So what I encourage you to do is to actually take this title, highlight it, cut and paste it down into your alt text, okay? And then come in here and just get rid of the dashes, okay? In your URL, when you name the image, you need dashes. In the alt text, pretend it's a sentence, okay? And get rid of the dashes. And then you can also control where it's going to go, center, right, or left. You can control if you want it to link to anything. You can also control the size, okay? And let's say, for instance, if you happen to load this picture and you say, oh, wait a minute, that's not the right version, you can come right here and click Edit Image if you want to edit it, or right below that is Delete Permanently. So go ahead and delete this, yes. Interesting. Okay. It was interesting how the Google symbol was on that pop-up. Anyway, so we've been talking quite a bit about search engine optimization and SEO. So let's discuss that a little bit further now, because it's something that can be very confusing to people. And of course, that's what I do at Cup SEO. It's quite a bit of what we do is optimize websites, optimize our clients' blogs. But when we're talking about optimizing the website or optimizing a blog, essentially what we're doing is we are helping our page content become more valuable or more well-defined to Google, right? So to do this, we use optimal keywords or keyword phrases. We write rich, relevant content that's specific to the topic that we're discussing, okay? So the relevant content plus the optimal keywords help Google kind of make a hierarchy of all the different websites and blogs that talk about that particular topic. And then Google looks and goes through its algorithm and decides, well, where am I going to put Cup SEO for this particular blog post based on all this information, okay? Some of you in the webinar are clients of mine, so either use the keyword report that I've generated for you, or if you haven't gotten yours yet, once you get it, that becomes your playbook, your handbook for every single blog post. Look at it and say, okay, well, I'm talking today about online marketing. Which keywords are good to use for that? And then integrate them into your blog post, into your images, into your title, and so on. Okay? So once we do that, it's almost like pumping up a raft before you go into the water. Okay? So to give you an example, if you take that raft and just throw an almost completely deflated raft into the water, it's either going to sink or it's going to start to get water in it, right? So SEO, search engine optimization, essentially is like the air that gets pumped into that raft, all right? So as we optimize page after page, blog after blog, image after image, it's just like pumping up that raft to the proper PSI, the pounds per square inch, right? So now that raft is fully on top of the water, and it can even hold weight. So 4, 5, 6 people can get in it, and it's still up above the water. All right. So that's what we're looking to do with our blog and our websites, is get it so well optimized that our website, our blog, rises up in the search engine rank. Okay. So when somebody looks for SEO in Madison, they find Cuppa SEO. Okay. Because it's right up there at the top. And please, as always, if you guys have questions or this doesn't make sense, feel free to click the little gray talk button in the upper left-hand corner, and you'll get some chat window on your right, and just go ahead and ask your question whenever. Chat is open for the entire webinar. Okay. So we've talked about imagery, and we've talked about tags and categories. And just to reiterate, with tags and categories, categories are for the human eye, tags are for the search engines. That being said, they can sometimes be the same term or phrase or word. That's okay. But obviously how to, which is one of my categories, is not going to go in as a tag because it has no SEO value. But as a viewer, if I read this post, I might be like, wow, I want to see what else Joey can teach me about that I can try and do myself, right? I'm all about empowering people if they have the inclination to try and do it themselves. Why not? So, but there are some other things here like user experience, UX. They mirror each other. Again, we want to have 4 or 5 in each. And the next item I would like to address with you guys is blog post frequency and length. Okay. But before we do that, I want to show you guys a really nice little plugin. If you guys are using a WordPress website and you have a blog on your WordPress website, it would be a really good idea, if we can get to the bottom of this blog post already, to, if you're not already using something called Yoast SEO, it's a free plugin that's pretty easy to install. I suggest having your web developer do it. This way, if there's any problems, they can fix it. But it's easy to install, free. And what this does is it gives you more control over your blog. So if you want to test it and say, well, did I use the phrase user experience enough? I could put that in here and it'll give me some quick metrics, okay, with a green or a red bubble, letting me know if I've accomplished my goal or not. Okay. What's also nice about this plugin, the Yoast SEO plugin, is that I can come down here and actually manually manipulate what's called a title tag. Okay. We're not going to get too deep into what that is, but a title tag essentially is up at the top gray bar on any web browser, Safari, Chrome, doesn't matter. We want our title tag to be 70 characters or less. So we go ahead and here manipulate it, make sure it looks good to the viewer, and that it also sits within 70 character range. This little box down here is our meta description. This is what people would see, let's say if they searched for user experience and I came up as a result in the natural results, they would see this little Cliff Notes version of the blog post. So again, we want to go in here and we want to populate this manually. If we don't, WordPress just sticks in the first 160 characters and calls it a day. Sometimes that's okay. Sometimes that's confusing. If it's part of a 180 character sentence, you wind up with an ellipsis at the end here. It's kind of yucky, and you might wind up having an incomplete thought. Okay, and if it's an incomplete thought, that might not be compelling enough for somebody to click through. Okay, guys, hopefully that makes sense. And this is just going to help you have consistency on your blog. It's going to help. Title tags will help with the SEO value. Meta descriptions don't have any SEO value, but they help with the human-to-human value. Okay. With that said, we do have a question from Regina. Hi, Regina. Do keywords change over time? That is an excellent question. And the short answer is typically they do not. Typically keywords, there's a lot of contingencies that go into play when I create a keyword report to make sure that they're the best keyword phrases for your business in your region, for the size of your company, the size of your website, and things like that. But most of the time, if it's a good keyword phrase, it remains a good keyword phrase. What might change over time is the competition that's associated with a keyword phrase. So let's say, for example, I'm Lane's Bakery, who if you guys have never been to Lane's Bakery on Park Street, if you're in the Madison area, highly recommend. I wrote and optimized their website a couple of years back. But for Lane's Bakery, one of their keywords was bakery, of course, and they had dozens of keywords. But let's just say, for instance, the keyword phrase bakery, that's going to have an amount of competition associated with it. So, and what that means is how many other websites in the region I'm searching in, which in that case was Dane County, how many other websites are using bakery as a keyword phrase on their website. So if it's not a lot, the competition's low. If it's a medium amount, the competition's medium. If it's a high amount, the competition's high. So what does happen sometimes, usually the competition goes up. You know, if the competition's high, it's very rare for it to go down. But what might happen from time to time is it might go from low to medium, from medium to high, or from low to high. Every once in a while, a keyword phrase will change in relevance. And what I mean by that relevance is it a good keyword phrase to use for your business for that particular blog post or web page? Best example I can give you is one of my customers is in the software business, and they make digital asset management software. Okay. And when we first optimized their website, the acronym for digital asset management, which is DAM, which is an all-day joke, it had some good relevance, and we used it. But over time, more and more the search results that came up for that particular acronym, DAM, became less and less about digital asset management and more about dams in America. So in that case, we had to do a little bit of rethinking on where we use that term. In our case, it wasn't a big deal because I use a lot of qualifiers with acronyms. It layers the keywords. So it could be something like damn hardware, damn software, whatever are the proper keywords. So those adjectives or those qualifiers help define the acronym. So in many cases, we didn't have to make a change. because of those qualifiers. So hopefully, Regina, that answers your question. And it's an excellent question. And it kind of brings up a can of worms, which I think we should address, though. When it comes to search engine optimization, a lot of SEO companies tell you that they're going to refresh your website. They're going to refresh your keyword selection. That's actually bad, okay? What we want to do is pick the very best keywords we can and then use them wherever appropriate, okay? We don't change them, because if we change them, it's just like changing your phone number. Google expects each and every blog post you write to have these identifiers in them, right? The relevant content, the named images, the optimized copy, right? That's say UX, user experience, conversion, web design, whatever it is. They're expecting that to be there. They're ranking you based on those phrases and that relevance of your copy. So now, if I go in there and change all the keywords, guess what happens? I drop right back down to the beginning, okay? And if I was ranking really well for a blog post or a web page, now all of a sudden I might drop to page 3 or 4, because in Google's eyes, I just changed my phone number and they don't know where to find me anymore. And all that authority, or in layman's terms, the credibility I've established with Google is gone. Not always completely, but to some degree when I change the keywords. So hopefully that answers your question. But what we really want to do, Regina, and everybody, what we want to do is optimize the blog post as best as possible and leave it alone. Okay? You'd be surprised. It might take up to like 90 days before you start to see traction on a blog post sometimes. That's how long it can take for Google to start to really give it its full amount of authority. It's just kind of how it works, about 3 months. Sometimes it's 2 days, sometimes it's 2 weeks, but 90 days is a good benchmark to kind of look at. Okay? Thank you for the question. So let's talk about blog post length. We talked about that already, and really a good rule of thumb, if you're just not sure where to start, is about 500 characters. You're very welcome, Regina. 500 characters is good because it's not too long, it's not too short. It's got something, Google has something to sink its teeth into as far as looking and seeing if the content's relevant, if there's keywords, in there. And it's also enough for a pair of human eyes to read and get some good value. Okay. That being said, I'm going to quote my 5th grade English teacher, Miss Krebs. When I used to be worried about how I was going to do on my English tests, because I was not a very good speller, which is kind of funny since I'm a writer. But I'd be really stressed, and Miss Krebs would see that I was having anxiety, and she'd say, Joey, just know anything is better than a 0. Just do your best. And that's the best advice I can give to you. If you write a blog post and all you've got in you is 200 words, or after 200 words, you're like, you know what? I've said what I want to say. That's okay. Move on. Optimize it. Do your tags and categories and publish it. Don't worry about it. Will it have as much SEO value as an 1,100 word blog post? Probably not, but it's better than a 0. And what's happening is Google is looking for fresh content on your website, right? Your blog is giving that fresh content. So as long as Google is consistently seeing you publish, oh, cool, they optimize their images. Oh, cool, there's keywords in their title. Nice, they've got some backlinks to some relevant articles. Google will give you some credit, or authority is what we call it, for that post, okay? So remember that, Miss Krebs, anything's better than a 0. That has stuck with me my entire life. So that's kind of the spiel on length. As far as frequency, a lot of people come to me and they're like, well, how often should I blog? I'm busy, I'm kind of worried about this. So the very best thing that you can do, if at all possible, is blog 3 times a week. And I know everybody on the webinar, just now your eyes kind of went, what? Who has time for 3 times a week? If that's your reaction, that's normal. That's what most people say. 3 times is optimal. Okay. 2 is better than 1, and 1 is better than none. But that 1 time a week, once every 7 days, is kind of your foundation. Okay. You want to blog at least once a week. It's okay if it's 6 days or 8 days. That's not a huge deal, but you really want to make sure like every 7 days a new blog post goes out. And what that does is it goes into your blog, right? And your blog is part of your website. So that fresh content comes in and it gets counted as relevant fresh content for the entire site. Google, what they do is called indexing. Okay, so eventually, usually takes a couple of weeks for smaller sites. Google says, oh, look at that, fresh content, nice, and gives you a little bit more authority. So let's say you do that this week. You get a little authority. Next week, a little authority, week after week after week, once a week, like clockwork. Now, all of a sudden, 10, 20, 30 blog posts in, Google's looking at you and saying, wow, this website, this business is really serious about giving me fresh content, about giving our viewers fresh content. And it gives you more credibility and more authority, and it kind of snowballs. When you're sporadic, you blog, and then 3 weeks later you blog, and then 2 weeks later you blog, and then a month later you blog, that starts to add inconsistency. I actually wrote a whole blog post about this. And with inconsistency comes weakness, okay? The freshness factor is weaker. Your authority factor is weaker. It's a lot like exercise. You know, if you go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week and lift weights and do push-ups and run on the treadmill, you're going to stay fit. And if you do it consistently, you're going to get more fit, right? But if you do it and then take a month off, you're going to be just as out of breath after a 20-minute run as you were last month. Okay? So consistency is the key here. At least once a week, again, is try and make that your minimum. And this is really interesting because, like, for me, I do once a week. And I've tested this. I stopped blogging for a few months, and I went from ranking first and second for my main keyword phrases to ranking at the bottom of page 1, or in some cases, I was on page 2. And all I did different was stop blogging. So this is a kind of a test I did on myself because I would never want to do that on a customer's website. But what happened was once I started blogging again, we saw week after week, month after month was kind of this trek back up to the top. So now I'm on page 1 for all my main keyword phrases. But sometimes I'm first, sometimes I'm second, sometimes I'm third. That kind of vacillates. But it's very interesting, the power of that fresh content. Just really, really interesting. So let's take another look at the Cup of SEO blog. And what I want to do now with you guys is just take you, sorry about that, to view the post. We're going to look at a couple of different posts. And what we're going to talk about is original content versus duplicate content. Okay? So original content is exactly what it sounds like. It's content that you write from scratch. So you guys will see here, every single blog post I write is written typically out of thoughts from my brain based on experiences I have with my clients, experiences I have in my research. That's where all these Understanding Online Marketing blog posts came from. But there are other things I like to do. I like to highlight this one here, Web Design and the Art of Conversion. This came from, I read a lot of design books, try and get my ideas so I can bring fresh concepts to my clients' websites when we build the website for them. So this one was based on this 1960s art by a gentleman named Tadanori Yoko, famous Japanese artist. When I saw this image, I said, that would make a really interesting homepage. So I went and sketched it out, very basic, just to look at the aesthetic and see if I thought that would work as a homepage that had a good user experience, that had good conversion tactics. Conversion means that somebody's going to click on one of these call to actions here in the bottom corner. So all of this is original content. All right. Duplicate content would be a couple of things. That would be like if let's say I took this one, right? Understanding Online Marketing Part 5, social media. Let's say I took that and literally cut and pasted into a different blog post and gave it a different title. Google's going to know. And they're going to see it as duplicate content. Or if I said understanding online marketing content and took out the part 5, right? And everything else, images, content stayed the same, it's duplicate content. Another way to iterate duplicate content is like, let's say you read an article and you really like it and you want to share it with your readers because you feel like it has value. Ethically, this is totally fine. There is no reason not to share, right? But what happens is if you cut and paste that article into your blog, what's happening is Google's going to see that as duplicate content. It's going to know that content originated from somewhere else. Now, what happens is if we have duplicate content is a couple of things. Sometimes Google will just look at that duplicate content and say, okay, this is a duplication of something else on this website or from somebody else's website. I'm not going to give it any credit. Okay. So it's kind of like getting a 0 for that blog post. We don't want that. We want to get credit, some kind of credit for it. If we're cutting and pasting content in from someone else's site, that can start to get tricky, because if Google looks at it and feels like we're being malicious or trying to steal copy from someone else, it might say, wow, this is what we call black hat strategies. Like the Old West, the guy in the black hat was always the bad guy, right? So this is what Google sees as black hat strategies. And it might say, well, if they're duplicating other people's content, at the very least, it's not so relevant because someone else said it, not them. And we start to lose authority because of that. Okay. So the next question that I usually get is, well, what if I do find, in my case, a great article about blogging? Let's say there's some new trend or some new tool in WordPress, and we want to share it, right? We want to share that article. What you do is write a 1 or 2 paragraph synopsis of what the article says, the gist, so to speak, right? The overarching theme. And then you give your opinion. You step to the plate as the expert and say, well, here's what HubSpot, or here's what SEO Moz, or here's what Cuppa SEO said about this. And here's my take on it. I tried this. I blogged once a week for 6 months, and oh my gosh, my traffic is double now. And here's what I blogged about. Here's what I did, like what Joey said. And here are some ideas I had on my own once I got started. Now you're sharing that good information. You've overviewed what Cuppa SEO said. So you're giving credit. Okay. You're keeping it as ethical as possible, being the expert. And if you want to, you can always put a link to my website or whatever, Forbes or whatever it is that you got the information. You can always put a link to the entire article. But when you do it this way, you do a 2-paragraph summary, and then you write your opinion. You put your expert 2 cents in, so to speak. Now it's original content. Okay, now Google likes it and does not see it as duplication. So hopefully that makes sense. Something else I want to show you guys. We have about 15 minutes left, so if you've got any questions, please feel free to fire away. But I want to talk with you about scheduling blog posts and also blog campaigns. These are kind of 2 things that are wrapped together. So first, let's look at scheduling a blog post, which is super easy. Let's just get back into our blog here. And let's say I want to make a new blog post, right? I didn't show you guys this yet. So up here, there's a new plus sign, okay? just going to go ahead and hover over that, and then I can write a new post. I can write a new page because mine is a website as well as a blog. But I'm going to click New Post. And when I click on New Post, it literally takes me to a blank page, okay, that I can populate with my new blog post, my new image, title, categories, and so on. So let's say I write a blog post. Obviously, this is just gibberish, but let's say it's done. And now I want to publish it, right? I've added an image. Let's do that quickly just so you guys can see. Let's say I want to reuse an image that I've used before. We'll go back to this sketch. Let me do that again for you. All I do is click on Add Media. This is the same no matter what WordPress theme you're using. Might look a little different, but it's always going to be there. I add media. I can upload, or I can use something from my existing library. I'm going to click on this guy, insert into post, and there it is. Again, I can alter the size of it very easily. I can come up here, make it any of these sizes, or I can customize it too. Okay, update, now it's smaller. But let's say I don't want to publish this yet. Let's say I just published a blog yesterday, and one of my clients canceled a meeting today, so I had time to write next week's blog post. I want to wait. I want it to come out 7 days later, right? So all I do is come over here to the little calendar where it says publish immediately. I go ahead and click edit. And this is very similar to what if you guys have published and scheduled things on Facebook. Same deal, or Hootsuite. Once I click on that button, just the edit button here, I can pick the month, the day, the year, and the time. So I can get real specific here. So, and you know, some of the clients I work with, some of the participants in webinars, they're like, you know, I like to take a day and get in my writer's zone and write 3 or 4 blog posts. That's fine. Your process, you will develop over time. And if it works for you, go for it. Could be completely different than my process, which is writing 1 a week. You might write 10 over the weekend, once a month, or once every 3 months, and then you've got 3 months worth of content. Really, whatever works for you. Okay. So once I set this here, I would click OK, and it would literally be all good to go. And on that date, on that time, it's going to push through. It's going to publish that content. Okay. We're going to cancel because we don't want to schedule this guy here. And we'll just go ahead and move it to the trash. Yes, it's okay. We can leave this page. Thank you. You're going to notice that WordPress and Safari or Chrome or whatever you're using is very conscientious. It really tries to to make sure you're not deleting something you don't want to. So now we talked very briefly about writing more than 1 blog post, right? Sometimes in a day we might want to write multiples, or we might just want to write 1 at a time. But regardless of how many blog posts we write in a sitting, we're going to want to set up a blog campaign. Okay. So we just looked at scheduling. Scheduling makes sense, hopefully, to you guys. Best time to schedule, it really depends on your readership. But this is different than social media. I just usually publish posts once a week whenever I finish them. But in some testing I've done, I always seems to get more traction in the morning or early afternoon than if I post something at night, if it winds up kind of getting traction right away. But again, don't stress over it. Just make sure you're getting it out once a week. So as far as blog campaigns, what is that? Okay. It's what it sounds like. It's a campaign that you put together so that your blogging goes from this level of stress to this level of stress. Okay, we're down here. So what we do is we open up our calendar, whether it's an analog calendar, like a date book, or if it's something we're using on the computer, and we schedule an hour of time, just like we would with a client, just like we would for a doctor's appointment. Schedule an hour at a time of day when you know your brain is fairly fresh. Okay. And then when that time comes, sit down and think about, okay, there's 4 weeks in this month. I need 4 blog posts for the month, in this case of April, right? We're looking at April. It might be 5 weeks. I'm not sure. So we sit down, we figure out how many weeks there are, and then we say, okay, well, what do we want to talk about? The great thing about this is you don't have to get too detailed. Think about 5 topics or 4 topics. Give it a working title, a working headline, right? Kind of a beginning, middle, and an end of it. What is this about? Okay, in my case, if it's about how to blog in 200 words or less, I might talk about how to write a good title, how to write good, rich content, and how to make sure you're implementing some keywords into there. Those might be my 3 points. That's 3 sentences in my campaign. It's almost like a proposal to yourself, right? So you write your title, you write your 40 or 50 word description, which outlines what that blog post is about. And if you think you're going to need to do some research about that, go ahead and do some research. Okay, it's okay to pull in some research material, cut and paste it in, or if you go and cite some other blogs or some other websites to get material, okay, just go ahead and drop those links in there. And this often raises the question, well, if I'm pulling content from somewhere else, isn't that duplicate content? Well, yes, it would be if I was pulling it in directly. But if I'm using it as research, let's say I was brand new to blogging and I wanted to write about it, and I'm just trying to make a career as a blogger about how to blog, I might learn things from other people. And then I have 2 options. Either 1, I cite where I got the information from, and I can put a link to it, right, to lead people there if I want to. Or 2, I just use that as research material, absorb it, form my own opinion, and write it in my own words. Okay, now it's not duplicate content anymore. So, when in doubt, I always prefer to cite where I find things, just to give a nod to the originator of the content, especially if it was something new to me that got me excited about writing about it. So hopefully that makes sense. And let's just check and see if we've got any questions going on here. No, we don't. Okay. So that campaign, the reason why it helps bring your stress level down so well is that when you're done with the hour, you have your 4 working titles, you have 4 paragraph overviews of your blog. So now when April comes and it's time to write that first blog post, you're not sitting there like this. What do I write about? Oh my gosh, my mind is a blank. All I can think about is that I have to go to the store, I have to pay the bills, I got to pick up the kids from school. You don't have to worry about it. Open up your proposal and pick which one you're going to write about. And there you go. Now, when you do it this way, you've cut down your stress and you've cut down your working time on that post because you've given your subconscious, I know this may sound weird, but it's true. You've given your subconscious time to think about it, to work on it, and to help you write it. Okay? Very, very important, very crucial. A couple of really good examples. 2 clients of mine, Nancy Depchik. I don't know if any of you guys know Nancy. She's a local speaker. She blogs once a week. She's taken this webinar and in-person workshop many times, and she talks about how that blog proposal has made this doable for her. Barbara Bustad, who's also a local business person. She does financial planning for the elderly. She's blogging very consistently now. Same deal. It's because she feels very comfortable, because she doesn't have to sit down and wonder, what am I going to write about? So let's talk for a minute. We have 6 minutes left, and I do want to touch briefly on social media, okay? Because social media is something that is important for different reasons for different businesses. Some people need to be on Facebook. If you're business to consumer, if you're business to business, most likely you're going to want to be on LinkedIn. And then there's Twitter, which is a whole nother discussion. But ultimately, when you're using social media, what you're going to want to do is drive people from your social media to your website. And this is where the blog can be incredibly powerful, because once a week, you have fresh content that you're sharing. So now you can go to Facebook and LinkedIn and wherever else and say, hey, check out this article on SEO and the user experience, or web design and the user experience, or whatever it is. And you share it and you put a link back to your blog post, bringing traffic to you, bringing potential customers to you, solving problems for people who are concerned about user experience on their website. Okay? A lot of times people share things on social media that someone else wrote. So here's the question. How does that make you look like an expert? It doesn't. It makes you the mailman delivering someone else's content to your readers. Just don't do it. Set up that blog and start posting, publishing blogs, and share it on your social media, including Google My Business. And if a big question mark just came up over your head, go to cupseo.com, go to webinars, and sign up for our next Google My Business webinar. It's complimentary. You'll learn a ton. Okay? The last thing I want to show you guys is what's called site stats. Now, if you have a standalone blog with WordPress, this is built in. If you have a WordPress website, it may or may not be built in, depending on what your developer did for you when you hired them to make your site. Okay. The good news is if your WordPress website doesn't have site stats, it can be loaded in. It's a free plugin. It's part of something that's called Jetpack. So you guys see here, Jetpack. Jetpack has a ton of stuff. And you can see some of the things it does here. Settings, OmniSearch, site stats, Ask-A-Met, which is spam, right? Catches spam that comes through. But right now, we're just going to focus on site stats. Super important to load this up. This is so much easier to use than Google Analytics to see what kind of traffic you are getting. Okay. So this is my site stats. It's got a few weeks here. You guys can see here in a graph form. We can look at this by day, by week, by month. Okay? And what this does, let's just look at today as an example. Here's the bar for March 16th. If I scroll down, it shows me how many referrers I have. Referrers would be essentially a search engine like Google or Bing, or even sometimes Yelp or something like that you might see that come through. Sorry. In my case, it's all Google. Okay, google.com, google.at. So, but it shows you how much traffic came in from referrals from search engines. And over here at top posts and pages, dissects, okay, I've got 32 hits today of traffic, which is not bad for 2:30 on a Thursday, on a Wednesday afternoon. If I come to top posts and pages, I can expand this and it will show me how many people came to each of my web pages. So we can see 10 came to the Blogging 101 webinar. Some of them probably signed up for today. Homepage. Here's a blog post, Fresh Brewed Customer Spotlight on Campus College Planning, and so on. What's nice about this is I can look at it on a daily basis, but you know, if I want to see like which blog posts trend better, which ones get more traffic or more hits, I can come up here, okay, and click on the months button. It's going to shift my results down here. You see now by month, and you guys can see over time that there's a trend for more traffic, which is great, although February was slower than January. This is nice though, because I could look back and say, well, what happened last February? Okay, last February I had 311 hits, whereas this February I had 425. So an improvement, right? We can look at long tail here, what's gone on our blog or our website. But what's nice is we can do that same thing down here in summaries. And I can click all time, right? And it's going to show me which, in my case, which web page or blog post has gotten the most traffic ever in the history of Cuppa SEO. And here you go. So if I'm working to see what's trending, what people care more about, I might be like, okay, well, Google My Business webinar, a lot of people like that. And that's only been around for about 6 months. And we can just kind of look at this. What is a bleep? That's a fairly popular one. So you get the idea. This kind of shows us trends and what gets more traffic. And if it gets more traffic, we might want to focus writing more blog posts about that going forward. So we are out of time. Somehow an entire 90 minutes just passed, which is always shocking to me when I do these, because 90 minutes is a long time to talk. So what you guys can expect from me next is going to be a follow-up email, most likely tonight or sometime early tomorrow, that will include a link to the free Blogging 101 ebook, which you guys, that's yours to keep and utilize, review it, use it as your kind of your playbook when you're getting comfortable blogging. And other than that, I just want to say thank you to everybody who has joined us today. It's been a pleasure to work with you. And I hope you have a great rest of the day, and happy blogging. Bye-bye, guys.